Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that behind-the-scenes look of the JAKIB Media pregame show, or at least audio version of it. Welcome in. We're just hanging. We're just like you. We're just hanging out. We're just chopping it up, as the kids like to say.
Boys in the hood. I'm not responsible for anything I said during that break.
Boy, am I glad that I held back. I remembered my schooling.
That was not me. That was my alter ego, Darwin.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the JAKIB Media pregame show. We got John McMullen joining us from the stadium coming up in just a second, and also Derek Gunn in our final segment is going to give us some over-unders when it comes to this Philadelphia Eagles-Minnesota Vikings matchup. And now let's go back to Lincoln Financial Field and talk to our friend and our Eagles insider and co-host of the wonderful show here on JAKIB Media, Birds 365, along with Jody McDonald as well. John McMullen joins us. John, how are you? What are the Eagles going to do with all these injuries? Help us.
I think they're going to be fine. It's not a best case scenario. I'm more interested, was there a live mic situation?
No, allegedly. John, allegedly.
Don't worry, John. We didn't say anything about you.
That's fine. You'd be the first one, so I'm not concerned about that. But obviously, yeah, the Eagles are banged up. But I think it's going to be about the fronts, and the Eagles are foundationally built the right way. They're strong up front on both sides of the football. I think Minnesota is weak on both sides of the football. I think as long as the pass rush gets home, I think the Eagles will be fine on defense. If it doesn't, then you got some issues, because no Reed Blankenship, obviously no Nakobe Dean. That back seven, which we have questions, at least on the inside, maybe not the outside. And you don't have James Bradbury, so that's a concern as well, because that puts a lot of pressure on Darius Slay. And everyone talks about Justin Jefferson, the game Slay had last year. But the Vikings have three good receivers, so it's not just about Justin Jefferson.
Hey, John, the Eagles are going into this game with basically three outside linebackers, no true middle inside linebacker. And, of course, we saw how they had problems covering the middle of the field last week against New England's duo of tight ends. Now you've got this guy, Hawkinson, who's the highest paid tight end in the National Football League and more athletic than those last two last week combined. How do you defend this guy?
Well, I think he's going to get numbers. He's going to get a number of catches. He's usually up in the 8 to 10 range. The question is, can you hold him from those yards after catch? Now, he had 8 catches against Tampa Bay, but he only had 35 yards on those 8 catches. So, that's acceptable if you keep him from those yards after catch. The problem is Tampa Bay has Levante David, Devin White, Antoine Winfield Jr. Yep. They have guys that can stop the play when the catch is made. Do the Eagles have that at this stage? I'm not sure you could say the same thing.
John, is there a risk that Sean Desai could possibly be limited in what he calls tonight because of these injuries? There's a reason why coaches don't like young players, because first of all, they don't communicate. Second of all, they don't study the way they need to. They have to learn how to be pros, and they're prone to mistakes. Will that have a significant bearing on how Sean Desai calls the game? Because we saw last week, he was pretty aggressive in the first half.
Yeah, I think it will, Seth. I mean, when you talk about the style of defense, the Vic Fangio-inspired defense, it's about communication on the back end. So it's always a concern when you have different pieces back there. There's an opportunity for blown coverages and those zone looks and those matchup zones. So you have Josh Jobe, who's going to start his first game. You have Terrell Edmonds is probably going to start at safety. Now, he's a veteran player, but it's his first time here. And he wasn't starting last week. Now he's probably going to start. You might see Sidney Brown get involved at some point, but we'll have to see on that. So I do think there's an opportunity for some blown coverages. That's why I think the Eagles, if they're going to win the game, they need to win it up front, and they need to win it with Fletcher Cox, who's going to play, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams dominating the interior of the Minnesota offensive line, which is not very good, to be kind. I think that's where the Eagles have to win the game. They have to get Kirk Cousins hurried up off the spots, maybe taking some dangerous chances as he did last year when he was in Minnesota. And I think they can do that because Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury typically, but it's going to be Austin Schlottman tonight, Ezra Cleveland. They're all bad pass protectors. They can get going if they're running the football. They're decent run blockers, but they're all bad pass protectors. I think that's where the Eagles have to win this game.
John, I think there's one key area that we may have overlooked. The Eagles' defensive line knows that they've got to be a force tonight. The area that I'm thinking about is to take some of the pressure off of Kirk Cousins, maybe a few bubble screens, a couple of screens to the backs, to kind of slow down the rush. Normally, that's the way you slow down the rush. When guys have just got their ears pinned back and they're coming at you 100 miles an hour, you take advantage of that. One stab by the offensive lineman, you get them out in the screen game, you get the screen game going. Now that you got them slowing down, they got to, respect the fact that you may run the screen or run the football. Now you can get, more into your pass offense. So it'd be interesting to see how they deploy what they do offensively to be able to slow this pass rush down.
Yeah, they're going to have to come up with something because they had a really, really difficult time against Tampa Bay. And, Vita Bay is a tremendous player, but more of a run stopper than a pass rusher, and he was throwing people around. And you can imagine coming off last week what Jalen Carter might be able to do. Seth, that's what I'm interested in with Jalen Carter because, he's a young player. I'm sure he saw all the clippings, everybody telling him how great he was. To be a great player in this league, it's got to be consistency week after week after week after week. I want to see how he handles that success, so to speak. And he's got a great opportunity to do it against this particular team. So I think he's going to play well, but he's got to play well in that pass rush. And so does, Milton Williams, I thought, had a great game. Fletcher had a great game. Jordan Davis had a great game. The Eagles are really deep right on that interior, and they have to make up for the absences of Nakobe Dean and Reed Blankenship and James Bradbury. Bottom line, look, you're going to have a downgrade going to Josh Jobe. You're going to have a downgrade going to Christian Ellis. You're going to have a downgrade going to Terrell Edmonds. So other guys have to elevate and sort of pick those guys up.
John, we're talking about the interior pressure with Jalen Carter. It looks like the left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, is active tonight. Did you see him in pregame? How's he moving around? Because it'd be nice to see our edge rushers get a little bit more pressure this week.
Well, he's a really good player. He was moving around well. When I say Minnesota, understand they have really good tackles. So Darrisaw's really good. Brian O'Neill, the right tackle, is really good. So that's kind of a strength for them in general. Now, the Eagles are strong at the edge as well, so that's a strength versus strength matchup. Hassan Reddick might win one battle. Brian O'Neill might win another. Same thing with Darrisaw and Josh Sweat. But why I focus on the interior is because the Eagles have the big advantage there. Not the case on the outside. Those are two of the best tackles in the league, and it's one of the best tackle tandems in the league.
And John, they're coming off a not-so-great game against that Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Their edge rushers were able to get home, some blitzes and some just winning their one-on-one battles. So when you do look at maybe guys like Hassan Reddick or maybe even a guy like Nolan Smith, and I agree with everyone when it comes to Jalen Carter is going to get his tonight, but when you do move to the outside, what type of production do you expect to see from guys like Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith, and Josh Sweat, as you mentioned?
Well, I always expect to see production from Hassan and Josh. We have to see with Reddick and the thumb, and maybe he's limited a little bit. Josh Sweat I thought, played well, even though you don't necessarily get the numbers because the football was coming out pretty quickly from New England and Mac Jones. I think Kirk Cousins is more susceptible to holding on to the football because he wants to make big plays down the field. So he'll wait that extra half second. So maybe have more of an opportunity to get home this week than last week. That might help that outside edge rush. As far as Nolan Smith, he's not going to play a lot early in the season. He's clearly behind those guys, Reddick Sweat, also Brandon Graham, even Derek Barnett. So, his main role is going to be special teams, and he'll get a handful of snaps, but I don't expect to see a lot of Nolan Smith on the edge.
Hey, John, put yourself in the coach's decision-making position, and with that said, how would you handle the running back situation? Who gets the workload tonight?
It's going to be interesting. I think fans are going to be happy to see DeAndre Swift. I mean, he's going to be the lead back, and I think Rashad Penny will mix in. But you know what? I mean, this team trusts Boston Scott, so I wouldn't be surprised if Boston gets in the mix as well. But from talking on Birds 365 all week, a lot of people weren't happy with how much Kenny Gainwell touched the football. So it can go one of two ways. This could be an indication and showing the fans why the coaching staff trusts Kenny Gainwell, wants Kenny Gainwell out on the field. Or Minnesota's not that talented on defense. Maybe it enables DeAndre Swift or Penny or even Boston to get a foothold and say, all right, maybe we'll look at these guys a little bit more. And then you'll have a real big test week 3 at Tampa Bay, because Tampa Bay, while they, very poor team, and we'll get to that, but very good defense. So that'll be a better test. Vikings don't have a lot of talent on defense right now.
John, I'm listening to what you're saying. Is it even remotely possible that maybe the Eagles don't have the confidence in DeAndre Swift that we think they do? Because his numbers were down last week. You talk about the opportunity for Rashad Penny and for Boston Scott to kind of show what they're doing. Well, DeAndre Swift is an accomplished running back in this league, and I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to be able to show the Eagles what he can do as well.
Yeah, no, look, I think the Eagles want to get DeAndre involved more in the passing game than a running game. He's a tremendous receiver. But yeah, I think people jumped the gun on DeAndre because for whatever reason he was a high draft pick. He's a Philadelphia native. He's never had more than, I think, 620-something yards in a season. So it's not like he's had big seasons as a runner in Detroit. And the problem I have with that, Seth, is remember the Lions were a bad team and they drafted DeAndre Swift to be the guy in the backfield. And he never became the guy in the backfield in Detroit. Maybe you're starting to see why. I've said it pretty consistently this week. Look, what do the Eagles devalue? They devalue running back, and they devalue your position, Seth, linebacker, and they don't pay those positions, and you generally get what you pay. And we're talking about running back and linebacker because, look, they pay the offensive line. They pay the deep fronts up front. They pay the cornerbacks. They have good players. At running back and linebacker, not as good.
Same thing to make you laugh, make you cry, John. Same thing to make you laugh, make you cry. Because you can devalue those positions all you want, but look at where they're sitting at this point in time.
Hey, John, a lot of fans, especially Mark Farzetta, are calling for Sidney Brown to get a lot of reps tonight. What do you think they're going to do with the safety position tonight?
Well, I think Terrell's going to start. But, this whole defensive philosophy is about coverage safeties, which is one of the reasons Justin Evans won the job opposite Reed Blankenship. So if they start having problems and they're getting gouged by Jefferson and Addison and Osborne and Hawkinson, I think there's an opportunity for Sidney to get some reps and maybe show the coaching staff he's a little bit more ready than they think. But it looks like they're going to start with Terrell Edmonds and kind of see how it goes. And if it goes well, he won't leave the field. One thing, if you get playing time, you get an opportunity, if you play well, nobody's going to take you off the field.
John, is it an experience thing tonight that the Eagles are, starting Terrell Edmonds more so than anything else, because I know that we had the conversation last week, and I think the area that he lacks in the most is coverage. It's one of the reasons why, what's the other guy that started last week?
Justin Evans.
Justin Evans.
Yeah.
The reason why he won the starting job last week. So, again, you're going to take a guy and put him in there against one of the premier wide receivers in the National Football League on this night. What is it going to take for him to, relinquish a touchdown, for them to say, okay, let's put Sidney Brown in there and let's live or die with him because he has the ability to cover better? I'd rather live with that right now, right out the gate, than to wait and see, knowing full well that guy could be a liability.
Started week 1, to be honest, and I said throw him in the deep end of the pool and see what happens, because I thought the Eagles could persevere against New England, maybe make a couple mistakes. Same thing here tonight with Minnesota, same thing with Tampa Bay next week, and then you could have them maybe up to speed for one. Now you don't even have to worry about Aaron Rodgers in week 6, but down the road when you have to worry about Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, those guys, maybe he's more prepared to play. I would have thrown him in the deep end, but yeah, you mentioned it, Seth. A lot of coaches don't trust young players. I think the Eagles are there with Sidney Brown. They still don't trust him yet, and that's the reason why, he's not out there.
John, before we let you go, as always, we'll close with your official prediction ahead of Eagles-Vikings Week 2. What do you got?
What I mentioned.
I'm sorry,
styles
John.
Make bites. This is a.
I'm sorry, John.
Yeah.
We it was cut out at the beginning there. Go ahead. Your prediction again, sir?
Styles make bites. This is a bad matchup for the Vikings with their offensive line versus the interior of the Eagles defense. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to be comfortable. I think the Eagles are going to win the game 31-21. Relatively easy.
31-21, John McMullen, Birds 365, our Eagles insider, has when it comes to this matchup tonight. John, thanks so much, man. Check in with you at halftime.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it,
John.
John McMullen joining us right there from Lincoln Financial Field. Appreciate it as always. All right, when we come back, we have some over-unders that Derek Gunn wants to run through. I can't wait to hear what he's got cooked up. We got our predictions as well ahead of Eagles-Vikings tonight. We'll be back in a few.